I believe now we can talk to Professor Steve Tsang, Director of the China Institute at SOAS University of London. Thank you very much. Look, I've got to be honest with you, I for one was shocked, I tell you, to learn that maybe this had actually leaked from a laboratory. Where are you on this?
Well, I think we can't rule anything in and we can't rule anything out. The Chinese government's case that it could not possibly have been a lab leak theory is something that we have to question, but we don't have smoking gun evidence to prove one way or the other at this stage. We should keep our minds open and we should insist on a full investigation.
Isn't that the smoking gun? Because there was supposed to be a full investigation. China blocked it every single step of the way. And then to follow that up, there were 27 scientists who put their name to a report claiming that the Wuhan lab leak theory was baseless, and 26 of them had links in one way or the other to the Wuhan laboratory. If that isn't a smoking gun, then I don't know what is.
Well, I'm afraid that is not a smoking gun. I mean, what you have is that a group of scientists have behaved unprofessionally and very poorly. You have a government that does not do transparency, and it is not doing transparency, and it is covering up something, but we don't know what it is covering up. And I think the smoking gun evidence will be something that will prove that it really started there. I think we should keep our mind open and we should ask the question, why any great power will want to suppress efforts globally to find out the origins of the pandemic of the century?
Because they would have to admit liability, essentially, for what has been completely destructive to our way of life for all over the globe. And she pointed out yesterday to this select committee that actually she believes there's some intimidation perhaps going on. There's not a climate of openness necessarily for people who might want to come forward with evidence. And isn't that the truth? That it's not that there necessarily isn't, but that people are actually genuinely terrified for their lives to come forward?
Well, intimidation by the Chinese government is routine in China. It's hardly unusual. They do it on a regular basis. So I don't think the fact that they are intimidating people over the lab leak theory necessarily means that they know for sure that the pandemic, that the virus originated in the lab itself. But it is something that we need to find out. I think we should keep an open mind on it. We should insist on that full and open investigation. Every government has a responsibility to do that. As to the virus starting in China in the first instance, virus can start in any country. Unless we know that it is a artificial lab engineered virus, I don't think we can pin that blame on that country for having a virus starting there. How that was being handled at the early stage of the pandemic, when the Chinese government knew that they had what in effect was going to be a pandemic, and yet suppress that information and ask other countries to keep their borders open, that's a different issue that we should criticize, and we can criticize. We have enough evidence for that. But the origins of it, we still do not know for sure.
Do you acknowledge, though, that it does look highly suspicious, doesn't it, that apparently, according to reports, 2 scientists at that Wuhan laboratory became ill with something resembling coronavirus in November 2019. The Chinese government then changed the ventilation system inside the Wuhan laboratory, refused access to anyone who wanted to come to investigate it, and then essentially engaged on what was really widely regarded as, if not a campaign of disinformation, certainly, well, I would argue a campaign of no information, actually, which allowed this thing to rip through the world. I mean, that is highly suspicious. Even if you don't think that's a smoking gun, it's suspect, isn't it?
Well, there is definitely a case for the Chinese government to answer. I don't think we have any disagreement on that. And overall, the Chinese government's management of the early stages of the emergence of the virus and the pandemic are really pretty appalling. I don't have any problem with that. But that's not the same as to say that we know for sure that the virus started from the laboratory. I think we will have much stronger basis to say whatever we need to say if we can have that proper, open, transparent investigation and established on a scientific basis beyond reasonable doubt how it originated. We need to know. The Chinese government owe it to us and to the rest of humankind to find out and establish the authentic origins of this virus.
Just very quickly, sorry, because we are a bit pressed for time. If it does emerge that it came from a laboratory, if it does emerge that it was engineered, and it does emerge that China covered that up, should China pay?
Well, I think if China engineers the virus, I think there is a strong case that the Chinese government should be held accountable to that. How that accountability should be, I think, is a matter that we need to discuss openly. And it is something which I think can go in many different directions.
Well, Professor Tsang, thank you so much for your time this morning, Director.